The university wants us to record these events. They want us to record these classes, even though we're meeting in class. So you can see, right? Everybody's here. So we'll just work with the laptop. And then I will try to, thank you very much. I will try to get these issues resolved. The problem is it won't recognize me as host on that, so I can't record the meeting. So, okay, so, hi! And so let me do what we typically do, and that is go to the, yeah, forget about that. We'll just use this. So now we go to Smart, let me open up the Cyber Campus, and we go to American, log back on there so we can do the smart attendance, and then go to attendance. And I already messed this up earlier today. Add smart attendance. And so your number is 142. 142 is your smart attendance number. And so we go to 142, go to the chat, type 142. And so anybody who's not here, 6 people are listed as signed in. I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there should be more than 6 people signed in. Okay, I got 6 participants. So the rest of you should also join in from the class, right? I only see 6 of you, but you don't have to go to the Zoom link. Huh? You mean the Zoom link? Yeah. Oh. Yeah, join through the Zoom link that I sent you. And because this is problematic. So please join through the Zoom link that I sent you, like you typically did. It's just that, as if we're having a regular class that we've had all semester, except now they're all together in one room. So, and the chat is 142. So please, everybody use the Zoom link, okay, that I sent you. Hi, Nick. Kento Itohi, Hyokyung-chon. So please join that. Okay, so, and it's being recorded. So one other person should join. Okay. So lots of excitement, always lots of excitement here. So let me open up my lesson plan. And that's the other class. Let me open up the lesson plan for the U.S. foreign policy class, because I had to finish up from here, and so we go to the lesson plan for today, and okay, so then I share the screen, and share a screen, and there is the debate. So we have a debate on Friday with Alyssa. Where's Alyssa? Hi, Alyssa. And Gilles. Okay, all right. Well, he's Khan. And on the debate topic, to South Koreans, the global rise of social media has made the news media part of the entertainment industry. Hooray. And all right, so that's a good place maybe to start thinking about where, let me close that, cancel that. Let me go back to the Cyber Campus. Well, let me go to the exercises that I have planned here. And all right, so here's a question for you. Please respond to the following statement. Social media enables and empowers citizens like Facebook and Twitter and Google. Does social media empower and enable you and me as citizens in a democracy to play a more active role in foreign and public policy making? So does social media increase your capacity, your power, your ability to be more effective in influencing the foreign policy making process or the public policy making process of Belgium, South Korea, or the United States. You're all from Belgium, right? Yes. Where's she from? Oh, okay. I don't know, one student is from Switzerland. Oh, she's not here. Oh, there she is. Okay, yes, or Switzerland. Okay. Does social media empower you, increase your ability to participate? In other words, what does participate mean? Taking action, any kind of action, voting, speaking, and seeing some kind of impact or effect or influence of your action in the community, among your fellow citizens, among your friends, among your parents, among your teachers, among your politicians, among your mayors, your local city councilmen, women. Now, I ask because, well, there's reasons why I ask, but do you think that social media has generally empowered people more to participate in shaping this world that determines their well-being, their fate? Right? Yes. Okay, well then, so let me, so what do we do typically do on this, when we do this on Zoom? I assign you to breakout rooms. So we'll go to breakout rooms. And so how about we make 3 breakout rooms and assign automatically and go create. And so open all the rooms. So please join your room. So Anais, Kim Eugene, and Kim Jae Hwan are in room 1. Elisa, Do-hee, and Nick are in room 2. And Tong-hoon, Tumin, and Chon Yo-kyung are in room 3. So you're in your rooms. Okay. So you're in your classroom too. So can you please decide where your group fits on this scale? And did I bring a coin? Yes, I did bring a coin. To flip a coin. You get to see me flip a coin in actual physical space instead of over Zoom. So heads, the first person each group will speak, and it's tails. So heads, the second person each group will speak, and it's heads. So the second person in each breakout room will be the one who speaks. So Kim Eugene for room 1, Do-hee for room 2, and Timan for room 3. So I tell you what, why don't you get up, put room 1 here, room 2 here, and room 3 here. So the people in room 1 meet over here, room 2 over here, room 3 over here, and talk to each other. As if we're real human beings. By the way, you're all vaccinated, right? You're not vaccinated. Are you going to get vaccinated? Will you? Oh, yeah. I thought everybody was vaccinated. Okay, I got vaccinated, some months ago, but so you're in your groups. So I randomly flipped a coin, and so help Kim Eugene speak for your group in terms of where you're going to be in this group, what you're in that position, and Do-hee and Timan will speak also. So where do you fit on the scale? And there's no right or wrong answer. Okay, there's no right or wrong answer. I just want to get you thinking and talking and thinking about this topic, because this is, I think, really important. That what does it mean to be modern? It's a really powerful question, because being modern associates with participation. What does it mean to be modern? You think you have the right, and not to mention the desire, to participate in shaping this world, because this world determines your outcome. Right? And you believe that you can participate, and you should be allowed to participate. And that's what citizens do. They have the right to participate in determining the policies of the government, as well as who is the government. Why? Because it determines your own personal well-being. And that might seem obvious, but that wasn't obvious to most people 400 years ago, 500 years ago. Right? In traditional, non-modern, traditional societies, the opposite of modern, let's say traditional. In traditional societies, like in what we call Switzerland today, or Belgium today, or Korea today. Imagine 500 years ago, you go into a time machine from 2021, and you go back to 1521 in what we call Switzerland today, or what we call Korea. And you come out of that time machine, and you go walking along, and you're in the mountains of Switzerland, and you come up to some poor, poverty-stricken peasant who maybe is only this tall because he doesn't get enough food to eat. So he's poor, poverty-stricken, never went to school, doesn't know how to read or write. And you come up to him, let's assume this person's from the way, because I'm a giant. And I can speak in the dialect, and I say, who are you? You're not going to say, well, I am a citizen of Belgium. You're not going to say that. You're not going to say, I am a citizen of Switzerland. You don't know what Switzerland is. It doesn't exist yet up here. Now, there are people who do know what Switzerland is. There are people who do know what France is. But 99% of the people living in what we call France today, they don't know what France is. They know their village, they know their family, and that's it. They're illiterate, they can't read or write, and somebody who does read and write is amazing, like the priest, the shaman. You can read the Bible. Even still in English, we have a term to cast magic on somebody, to cast a spell. It's Halloween. Cast a spell. People that can read and write, they can spell. They have magical powers. Right? So a person, 90% of people who are born in Switzerland or France or Korea 500 years ago, they're born, they live, and they die, and they never go more than 10 kilometers from their home. Their whole lives. Can you imagine that? They do not move more than 10 kilometers from their place of birth. That was the world 500 years ago. And so when people get sick, when people starve, when people suffer harm, when a rich, powerful lord with a sword comes up and takes their land, takes their property, takes their food, that person who lives in that territory, they do not believe that this world is created by people. The world is, the village is, the priest is, the Lord is, just the same way the mountains are, and the sky is, and the winter is, and spring is, and summer and fall. It's all the will of God. God created everything. God makes the sun come up. God makes the sun go down. God makes it rain. God makes you starve. God makes the Lord, and me, the peasant. And that is the will of God. But beginning about 400, 500 years ago, and accelerating with capitalism, people become aware of the fact, more and more, beyond the tiny group of people at the very top of the system, to encompass more and more people, that you know what? This world changes. This world changes. You know why it changes? It's not because of the will of God. It's because people can change. People become aware of the possibility of change. And that people make things change. People make this world, not the God, not the gods, humans. And once you become aware of that fact, you want to participate. You mean I don't have to starve? You mean I can imagine a different kind of world, a different reality? Well, you mean I don't have to suffer? You mean people that all wear hanbok do not have to live second-class citizens in the Japanese Empire? Because it have to be that way? I think I want to change it. I want to participate. That's what being modern means. So, I mean, this is a topic for many classes, but with this awareness of the shift, okay, imagine you're studying graduate school in Paris. You're on the left bank of the Seine River in Paris, and you're smoking what are the jeton cigarettes, the from cigarettes that don't have the little filter, and you're drinking coffee, and you're wearing a beret, French beret, and you have sunglasses on. And a French intellectual comes up to you and says, Timon, what is the essence of modernity? And you know what you can say? It sounds really smart. You can say, the essence of modernity, of being modern, is a shift from ascription to achievement as the foundation for giving status and honor to people in society. In traditional societies, your status, how much honor you receive, depends upon your birth. You're born a serf, you stay a serf. You're a serf, you're down here. He was born a prince. Oh, he's ascribed the glory of being a prince because he was born into the ruling family, the princely family. Oh, status is ascribed at birth. Your position in society depends upon your birth. That's it. In modern societies, status, respect, honor. You're going to applaud me. Why are you going to applaud me? Because I have achieved. Status in this ideal typical model, status comes through achievement. You respect and honor each other by what they do, by what they achieve, how much money they make, how many college degrees do they have, how much influence do they have, how successfully do they compete in football or sports. Anyone you want to evaluate achievement, you are supposed to evaluate people's status through what they do, not how they were born. And once people become, once you sit and once that shift from ascription to achievement as the basis for getting status in a society emerges, people want to participate. You mean I can change my status by doing something? By making lots of money? So I used to be a pathetic little baker in the town, in our village. I was Mr. Baker, Mr. John Baker. And then I started selling bread to the army. That's camp next door. And I started making lots of money. And you see I have lots of money. You start going, oh, Mr. John Baker, how are you today? Oh, my status changes. So once this shift from ascription to achievement happens, first in Europe, that's why this class is in English right now. And that's the foundation of a modern economy, right? You cannot have a modern economy unless people have ambition, dreams, belief in change, striving to change their status. And this happens as people become aware of the fact that people's status can change because the society is changing. Economic development is accelerating. Okay? And when you become aware of the fact that change happens and you can change your condition, possibly, you want to participate in politics. Public opinion emerges. People become aware of the fact, also, second level fact, that they belong to large groups of people. They're not just like my family comes from the village of Capitanano, groups of living. I'm Guido Villages from Capitanano. I go to becoming Guido Villages. I'm Italian, and I'm proud of Italy and other Italians. And I think Italy should be free and glorious, just like the French. And people demand to perform and change in society. They want standard rules and roles, institutions, statewide institutions, common rules and roles of behavior and identity. Because if we're going to evaluate each other by achievement, we have to know what the rules of the game are. Right? We got to know what a college is, and what a bachelor's degree is, and what a master's degree is, and what a PhD doctorate degree is. And fourth trend, so I don't forget, the fourth trend is we start looking to different leaders to represent us, to represent our changing values, aspirations, hopes. We go from honoring, oh, the Yamba, or the Pope, or the King, or the Duke, or the Pasha, or the Sultan, to start looking for alternative leaders, trade union leaders, teachers, guerrilla fighters, alternative new elites, and push aside the bishops, the kings, the dukes. Okay, so yes.
No, I was just going to say that the value of achieving you were talking about that in some instances it's financial. For example, Dalai Lama, who isn't rich at all, he lives like a very sober life. He has achieved a lot in his life.
And yes, you're right. This shift to new kinds of elites, away from traditional ruling elites, away from kings and dukes and pashas and sultans and popes, that's typical. Except when you see in the English case, the British royal family shifted successfully in the 18th century to establishing itself as a living symbol of the nation. And Vicomte de Bolingbroke, he came up, was the articulator of this ideology, God, King, Country, right? That the British royal aristocracy adapted to the rising demand for participation by an increasing section of the adult population, what we call Great Britain, to accommodate that demand, accommodate the demands for participation, representation, and co-opting these people and their leaders. Benjamin Disraeli is the great conservative Tory prime minister who, in the 19th century, worked to co-opt the rising the lower working classes in Britain to make them feel proud about having a king. And it's still important today. I mean, as you know, try to understand Britain leading the European Union any kind of explanation has to include an understanding of how important it is to the British in their identity of the British Empire being who they are. And the king, a queen, was the top elite of that empire. The official title of the British monarchy was king and emperor until the 20th century, until the British Empire ended. And you see that today with the Conservative Party in Great Britain. We don't need the European Union. We have the legacy of the British Empire, Canada, Australia, and the United States. We don't have anything to be ashamed of as British patriots. We didn't lose any wars. We won World War I. We won World War II. Nobody conquered us the way Belgium was overrun twice. We have nothing to be ashamed of. European Union is a losers club. We're winners. And that glory of the British Empire and that shift of the traditional ruling elite to accommodate this rising inevitable demand among the mass population to participate in the exercise is key to that issue. The French king didn't do that. And so he opposed at a critical time, but that's another topic. So that's why I get excited about participation. Because that's what really one of the aspects of being modern is, that you just take it for granted, right? But that you have the right as a person to have a voice in determining this world, because this world determines whether you suffer or benefit. And keep in mind, this notion of ascription as the basis of status in traditional societies, it doesn't completely disappear. Even to this day, you international students, in Korea, it's illegal for a doctor to tell a mother of an unborn baby, a fetus, what the sex of that fetus will be. Because in traditional Confucian societies, men are ascribed higher status than girls, just like inborn men. And if they find out, oh, that unborn baby is a female, they might kill it. So it's still to this day illegal in Korea for a doctor to tell a mother what the fetus, the gender, the sex of the fetus is. And it's not just a funny old thing. There's estimates that tens of millions of girls have been killed in the 20th century in India and elsewhere, or even still maybe in China. Oh my God, we're poor. We had a baby, the baby's a girl, we can't afford the girl. Let's try again with a boy. So, you know, but in terms of politics, in terms of the role of ascription, even in one of the least descriptively defined societies in the world, the United States, as an immigrant community, right? People chose to go to America, except for the Africans and the Indians already there. People knew about the possibility of change when they decided to go from Belgium or Switzerland or Italy or Korea or China, and they went to the United States. The United States was a country born modern. So America is all about participation. We have elections. I participate in elections 3 times a year. There's an election going on yesterday, November 2nd in Ohio. 3 times a year I vote. Everybody has the right to participate. We hate Yanban. We hate aristocrats, at least we tell ourselves we do. Right? We're a country that was founded by people that rejected aristocrats. But still, even in America, and I think, by the way, South Korea is also one of the least descriptively defined countries in the world because of their horrible history, in part, and Israel also, another. But it never completely goes away, and the legacy of ascription comes through habit, but it typically reflects itself in the belief that certain families have a leadership role just by being members of a certain family. So I don't know Belgian politics or Swiss politics well enough, but like even in the United States, if you're born with the last name Kennedy, Kennedy, you can be a moron. But if you've got the right name, Kennedy, people want to pay attention. What do you have? What's your opinion, Mr. Kennedy? I mean, one of the children of Bobby Kennedy was murdered in 1968. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He's my age. He's a nut job. He's going around telling everybody, don't take vaccines. Vaccines bad. Vaccines will kill you. And he has this huge following on social media. Why? In part because he's Robert Kennedy Jr. Robert, tell us, Robert, what is your view about vaccines? Well, I mean, vaccines are bad. They're bad. Oh, Robert F. Kennedy says they're bad. Just because he's got the last name Kennedy, or Bush, or my home state of Ohio, the Taft family. They dominate Ohio politics. One of the Taft people negotiated the Japanese-US agreement to partition Asia, Philippines to US, Korea to Japan in the 100 years ago, over 100 years ago. But the legacy of a name, and this is stronger in Europe, right? If you've got that prefix in your last name, von Humboldt, or von der Leyen in Germany, that means something in European politics. Oh, she belongs to the aristocracy. What is your opinion, Mr. Aristocrat? So, participation, let's go back to this. So please respond to the following statement. Social media enhances your ability, my ability to participate. So please decide and go back to the, let me close the groups. And I guess I should make a statement as well. $2019. The pre-pandemic time. I'll use this graph too. Heads, I'm 1, 2, or 3. And it's tails. Heads, I'm 4. And it's tails, I'm 5. Okay. Okay. Yeah, these are really exciting topics. It looks like you're done. Okay. So I was to be strongly disagree. So let me stop the share. I get really excited about these topics. You see, because nationalism associates with participation. You acquire large identity communities. You go from being just a Guy Dominicis and Capitaniano to becoming Guy Dominicis, the Italian, or so-and-so the Chinese, or so-and-so the Russian, or so-and-so the French citizen. And I'm really into nationalism. Like that's my big topic of focus in terms of the kind of stuff I work on. World War II was the nationalist conflict, and you saw, stereotyping, emotion, and nationalism, they all go together, including, stereotyping to do horrible things like genocide, like in World War II in Europe, right? Or you see happening in other parts of the world now. And this shift from ascription to achievement, and the movement from old traditional elites to new kinds of representative elites, that's been going on in Asia and Africa in the 20th century. Not that long ago, the 20th century, when I was your age, during the Cold War, Vietnamese nationalism was powerful. It defeated the United States in Vietnam, while the Americans were allied with traditional Franco-Catholic aristocratic class, landowning class in Vietnam, defeated the United States. Because this shift in Vietnam happened later than it did in France. We all know about the first big case of nationalism appearing in the world in the French Revolution, right? But Western Europe was only about 100 years ahead of everybody else. Only about 100 years later did you see this inevitable process be speeded up through interacting with Japan, United States, France, Belgium, in the Congo, and so on. And now the Americans are defeated in Afghanistan. And now they're terrified because participation demands among Muslims are moving away from the traditional ruling elders in Afghanistan to what we call Islamic militants, ISIS. So that's why I get really excited about participation, right? And not everybody's a nationalist, but nationalists tend to dominate the nation state political system of the United States, China, Russia, Germany, France, because these people are motivated. They get emotional. I love my country. You know the truth. The truth is in your heart. What is your heart telling you? Love France. Love China. Love Russia. You know the truth. Don't listen to those cosmopolitan, leftist, Marxist, progressives talking about global human rights. The truth. Don't trust your heart. So, okay, so let's see where you are here in the breakout room. So, okay, close all rooms. I should have done that a while ago. This will take 60 seconds. So, who's going to speak first? So, does social media make it or make you believe or make you feel that you are, maybe that's the way you should phrase it, because my theoretical background in terms of my training focuses upon perceptions and patterns of perception, because on the basis of perception, you make decisions. And how we perceive the world changes depending upon our values and our motivations. People tend to see the world in ways that make it easier for them to do what they want to do anyway. And so going back to that statement, does social media make you believe that you are participating? Maybe you're not really, but do you believe it? Oh yeah, man. I'm linked up with all of my buddies and we are organizing and we're going to go to the Capitol on January 6th, 2021 and stop the steal. And yeah, I'm participating, man. Ooh, yeah. So you can't understand politics unless you understand emotion. Some of you Marxists might say, oh, it's all about money. It's all about money. Money, 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 money. People don't fight and die for money. Typically. Okay, so let's go back to the share screen. And so group one, well, let's see, who's going to speak first? Stop share. And heads, you know, I have to wear these all the time, basically, when you're my age. But it affects depth perception. So I have to, when I try to flip things in the air, I have to drop them. So I got it. So heads is group one, and it's heads. So Kim Eugene. Kim Eugene, where's Kim Eugene? Hi, Kim Eugene. So what did your group decide as to where you fit on this scale? You're between strongly agree and agree. Why? Speak up loud. Yeah.
And also, social media is probably those policymakers, they can more those people from social media. So people will tend to participate by representing their thoughts.
I mean, I'm not saying participation is necessarily good, but you saw a big increase in the amount of the number of voters who voted in the U.S. election under Donald Trump in 2020. The highest turnout in 80 years. Thank you, Donald Trump, making more Americans, maybe kind of Americans I don't like, you might not like, or maybe you do like them, participating. Like finally, a person who represents me. And I'm not a very pretty person. I might not be very smart, but he is who I see myself in. I trust Donald Trump. Yeah, participation, is, I'm being neutral here. Okay. And, okay, so then, Group 2 is heads. And it's tails, group 3. Okay, Timen.
So I think the most important thing in the sentence is rewarding powers. Because, because I think we've seen like a lot of, because of social media, a lot of people have powers. For example, during the Arab Spring, Egyptian people saw that Tunisia, I think it was Tunisia, had that they had stood up against the president, and he was impeached, stepped down voluntarily. I don't know which one of the two. Then there was someone, an Egyptian guy who
Sisi was overthrown, yeah. But he won an election, then he was overthrown by, not Sisi, Morsi.
And then the Egyptian guy saw, he looked at Google, and he saw what happened to Egypt. He was empowered by the things that they would do. So what he did was he made a Facebook event actually, which said that they were all going to go onto the street and also try to teach their president. Yeah. So they all went, and this event became huge because of the power of social media, and it was created on Facebook. And they all went together on the street, and that's how he got it. So it was because of Facebook that the president of Egypt was impeached first.
Well, or was forced to step down. I mean, that's what, I'm an old man, right? So I remember during the Arab Spring 10 years ago, people were saying, look, social media is playing such an important positive role in organizing dissent and uprisings against the authoritarian, corrupt dictatorships in the Arab countries. Yay, social media! Yay, yay, yay!
Actually, also have to look at things that happened after that. Once that, because of Facebook again, I think also a lot of some misinformation.
Oh, I remember 15, 20 years ago, yeah. People were saying that Facebook, social media is empowering, it's good, it's allowing you and me to have our voice and not just receive what the television and the radio tells us. We can respond, we can react, we can challenge. Yay, social media! Arab Spring, yay, social media! Oh, Donald Trump got elected. I mean, Donald Trump would not have gotten elected without his Twitter account.
Isn't that also why so many people?
Yeah, well, he's polarizing, but he did what he needed to do to get elected, and he did in 2016. And the world came disturbingly close to a disaster, and could still happen. So, group 1, who's group 1? Group 1? Oh, we already spoke. Okay, this group, and your group is. I'm just trying to remember what I missed. Alisa, Nick, and Dohi. So Dohi, yes, so where did your group place itself on the scale?
More information about the it's very it will be good to deliver their opinion. So I think the social media is empowered, enabled to play a more active role public policy.
Yeah, I mean, everything, the world is complex. So there's good aspects to social media and not so good aspects to social media, right? So I flipped my coin, and I was told by the coin to write strongly disagree. So this is what I was able to write before we had to move on. Social media does not empower me as a citizen because surveillance capitalism. Surveillance means watching, monitoring. Capitalism results in me being unconsciously controlled by advertising. So what is this surveillance capitalism? And you Europeans are on the cutting edge of addressing this problem. That social media, whenever we use Facebook, they're gathering all the information they can from us about who we are, our age, our viewing preferences, what we read on the internet, and they're using that to sell our aggregated personal information to companies that want to advertise. And so this includes companies that want to sell things, but also political groups that want to influence us through gathering as much information about us as they possibly can. And then targeting advertising and messages to us to control us. But not consciously control. I say, you do what I say, or say, using incentives. I know, like, because I'm a single man, I'm always getting advertisements for me, cute Filipino, single Filipino women and Thai women. They're always using, because they know everything about me from my social media, right? So they use these advertising mechanisms to appeal to our fears, our anxieties, our needs, our regrets, our hopes, and they do it not just to sell us things, but also as political campaigns do it, right? To get you to vote for Donald Trump and spread lies, the kind of lies that they think I want to hear anyway. Because as I said, people typically, they want to see the world in a way that makes them feel good or allows them to feel good about doing what their heart wants them to do, what they feel they really want to do. So I'm a kind of person that doesn't really like Black Lives Matter. African American civil rights movement. For whatever reason, somebody who wants me to vote for Donald Trump knows from my social media coverage that I'm really in supporting the police, will send me some kind of information or half-true or false information, misinformation that gets me excited about voting for Republicans in the next election, based upon they know that I like to read stories about police fighting Black people, because that's what I pay attention to. And they notice my comments on social media, you know, that I write on comments. And so they're controlling us without us realizing we're being controlled. Am I being empowered, or am I being manipulated by, or what do I think? What do I believe? What do I feel? But am I really being empowered? Am I really participating? Or am I being, or how do you understand participation? You can say, I'm participating if I feel like I'm participating, period. I like Donald Trump. You can tell me all you want about how I've been brainwashed, how I've been manipulated. You can go to hell. I like Donald Trump. I'm participating by supporting Donald Trump, by giving his campaign money, by voting for him. Or can you take a more Marxist perspective and saying, because Marxists like to believe that you and I have objective interests based upon our class, whether workers or bourgeoisie or aristocrats, and we have objective interests, true fundamental interests. We might not realize them because we're being brainwashed and controlled by the methods I just described, but we have true interests, and sooner or later, we must recognize them, because if we don't, you have wars, death, suffering, catastrophe. But so it depends upon how you want to conceptualize participation. And this was covered from something, this is one of my favorite news sources, Democracy Now! It's a so-called progressive leftist organization that's been around for 25 years. And here's a story by somebody who's a professor at University of California, Los Angeles, Ramesh Srinivasan. And this is the transcript of his interview. He's talking about artificial intelligence. These social media companies, they gather this information about what I watch, what I click on, what I like, what I dislike, and they gather it all automatically through what are called artificial intelligence, AI, right? You see that here, AI, algorithms, right? Yeah, both are extremely important. Juan Gonzalez is the other person, the journalist in Democracy Now! I mean, first, to the point about people's relationship to AI, it's too slow. We tend to talk about AI these days as some sort of leviathan, but what we're actually talking about is when we're discussing artificial intelligence, are the mechanisms by which various types of technology companies, mind you, which are the wealthiest companies in the history of the world, I mean, worth what? I think Facebook is worth $1 trillion. Some of Google is or something. All of which are leveraging our lives, our public lives, our lives as citizens, even the internet that we paid for. It's basically the mechanism by which they're constantly surveilling us, surveillance capitalism. They're constantly transacting our attention and our data. And they're playing with our psychological systems, our psychology, actually in multiple ways. They're getting us into fight or flight mode, right? Nationalism, I think, is in our DNA. It's something that emerged as we were evolving as mammals, that we have a predisposition, not necessarily you, but speaking about Homo sapiens, we have a predisposition to stereotype and to have intense emotions that associate with those stereotypes that go back to fight or flight. Imagine, right? This is Africa, 250,000 years ago. We're in a little tribe. We see a water hole where there's animals. We need the water, we need the food. We go there, another group of hominids, early Homo sapiens, come over the hill. Do we fight them for the water hole, or do we run away? Do we fly? Fight or flight? And if we're going to fight them, it helps if I hate them. I want to kill them. I can pick up a rock and smash their heads. Or fight or flight. Nationalism is intense in-group activity, right? Against a perceived challenge. What makes us different as Homo sapiens is we have this grossly overdeveloped forebrain, so we can self-identify within groups that can be huge, like China, not just Di Dominicis group, not just Capitaniana group, Italy, China, involving millions and millions of people. So he's commenting upon that basically it's getting us into fight or flight mode, and people like that. People want to get entertained. They want the emotion. They want to get outraged. Oh, I'm outraged. Oh, I like being outraged. Oh, I'm reading on Facebook about how policemen are being attacked. Oh, I'm outraged. Are you outraged? Yeah, I'm outraged too. Ah, we're outraged. Are you outraged? Yeah, we're outraged. Oh, yeah, I'm outraged. Woo! We like that. We like doing that. Maybe not you, but generally speaking, humans like doing that. And social media encourages that because it makes us want to pay more attention, spend more time on Facebook, for advertisers to spend more money advertising on Facebook, because my eyes are glued to Facebook as I'm outraged. Yes. I think we have a predisposition to form in groups. It's something in our DNA. But you're right, when you're born, and this is a theoretical perspective in international relations theory called constructivism. When you're born, you're not born Belgian. You're made Belgian. You're constructed Belgian. You're constructed Korean. I'm constructed American. You're constructed Swiss. So we have predisposition to form in groups, more than one. Like, pick on me. Who am I? Who am I? You might say, oh, well, it's Professor Ben. So Ben belongs to the Di Dominicis group. Ben belongs to the American group. Ben belongs to the white in group. Ben belongs to Ohio in group. Ben belongs to Catholic in group. Ben belongs to, and you can go on and on and on. These are all in groups to which I self-identify that you use to try to describe who is Ben. Class, you can say professor. But some of these are more important to me than others. I'm not going to fight and die for the Pope. I might feel bad if you go, Pope Francis is a joke. But if you threaten America, or you threaten my family, I'm willing to risk my career, my life, not to mention sacrifice my career to defend the well-being of this in-group and the members in it, or America, or Korea, or China. I don't know enough about Belgium. Like, how strong is Belgian nationalism? We always hear about how they're so divided between Flams and balloons. and they can't form a government after election, it takes months. Like, how strong? Yeah. But it must be there.
Me, for example, I'm not nationalistic, but that's because I represent expert practice. That aspect, so I don't.
You know, or Switzerland. Switzerland is a case like America. Typically, you can have different bases for nationalist behavior, right? You can have a community basis on culture, ethnic group. A Polish person is somebody who speaks Polish and is Catholic. You can be Jewish and born in Poland, but you're not considered Polish by your typical Pole because you're Jewish, and a Pole is not a Jew. Or in Bulgaria, where I spent 15 years. You can be a Turk. Your family can be born and live in Turkey, in Bulgaria, aside for generations. The Bulgarians will not assume that you're a Bulgarian. Your passport says you're Bulgarian, but in your heart, you're a Turk. You're not a Bulgarian. So you can have ethnic community basis for self-perceived this definition of who my national group is. Sectarian group. Like Osama bin Laden was a Muslim nationalist. He wanted to unify all Muslims in one Muslim state. From Andalusia all the way to the Philippines. Racial definitions. I mean, this is what Hitler and the Nazis based their effort to create their empire. They're not just fighting for Germany, they're fighting for the white race and its dominance against the Mongol races, the lower races. And then, yeah, it's all subjectively defined. I mean, they couldn't decide if, what equal Slavs. Is Ukrainian, are they closer to Germans than Polish? And then the fourth group is territory. And so immigrant societies like America, Argentina, Australia, those are nationalistic states, nation states based upon conceptions of who we are by territory. And typically in Europe, nationalism focuses on ethnic group, except in Switzerland. But the claim is that Switzerland is a territorial-based nationalism. Like, are you French or German or Italian, Swiss? Right? And that supposedly these French Swiss or Italian Swiss or German Swiss, they will shoot invaders coming from Italy or France or Germany because they're first Swiss and then second or third or fourth Italian, German, or French. Supposedly. I mean, I've never tested it. But so this fight or flight mechanism, he's spot on here, right? It getting us in a fight or flight mode to trigger and activate our attention and our arousal emotion to keep us locked in watching Facebook and therefore behaviorally manipulate us. They're also feeding us into groups that are increasingly hateful and divisive. We saw that with January 6th, for example, and the mechanism, the means by which they are able to do that is by playing with our emotions, taking us to these groups so we can recognize falsely that we are not alone in having particular viewpoints, that there are others with more hardcore viewpoints. So, I mean, I thought this was great. This is what social media does. It fractures our in-groups by encouraging us to feel like we belong to in-groups and affirming who we are in a world where we're getting lots of messages that somehow I'm inadequate. I'm not rich and famous. I'm not making lots of money. I didn't graduate from college. But Facebook, I can find people that share this resentment against Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton and the so-called globalists. So is this empowering? Is this increased participation? So what's the solution? Well, the European solution is we have to stop Facebook from gathering private information. So whenever you go to a European Union website, you know this. They always ask you, will you accept cookies? Will you accept cookies? Yes or no. That software to be put on your computer to record that you were at that website. They always ask, and that's because of European Union laws. And the European Union supposedly is this making the most progress in addressing this need for privacy, not allowing Facebook to gather as much information about you as possible. Yes?
Well, I don't know if you know the name actually, that is actually just one that you should also get to.
Yeah, and Facebook fights, and they continue to fight. They're so big, you can fine them $1 billion. You know, the European Commission, they put fines on, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars of fine, but it doesn't stop them because they're making so much money by making you the commodity, me the commodity. They sell us through our histories of information they gather in our browsing and preferences and likes and dislikes, everything we do on the internet, to advertisers, including political campaigns that are trying to get us to vote in certain ways in elections or promote their foreign policy objectives. Are we empowered? Are we foolishly believing we're empowered when we're really manipulated, like Marxists would tend to focus on? And those are questions of ontology and epistemology. They go on here and they note how in places like the Philippines, in much of South America, Facebook is the internet. People, when they get on the internet, they get on Facebook. And so now he goes on here, if you look at those mechanisms of manipulation of behavioral, and by the way, one of the reasons I'm concentrating on this is because the textbook is already out of date. There's some discussion in that chapter this week about social media, but this is all accelerated with Trump, the outcome of the 2020 election, the pandemic. And so the chapter in the textbook, it really doesn't cover this very intensely. So now if you look at these mechanisms of manipulation, of behavioral manipulation, which are actually quite common across big tech, but very specifically egregious in the case of Facebook. Now let's look at when it comes to the global South, the so-called global South. We're talking about the African continent, South America, South Asia, Southeast Asia, and so on, represent the vast majority of Facebook's users, because here we're talking about users, not just of Facebook, the technology, but also platforms like WhatsApp and Instagram as well. Now, in many of these countries, there is not necessarily a strong independent media or strong sort of journalistic press to rebut or to even actually provide some sort of counter visibility to all the hate and lies that Facebook prioritizes. Because we know that, and Frances Haugen has confirmed this, that Facebook's algorithm prioritizes divisive, polarizing, and hateful content because of algorithmic and computational predictions that it will capture our attention, it will lock in our sympathetic nervous system. So in the chapter you're reading this week, we talk about communications media, right? I mean, when I was your age, there were 3 channels for television that I could watch for the news. And there were editors and journalists that would control and moderate and check whatever is broadcast on those news, quote unquote, news sources. Now there's an infinite amount of news sources that call themselves news. They're not even really news. Facebook doesn't, or only recently has begun to try to exercise some kind of moderating, editing function over all of the garbage that's posted there, that until now, anybody could post anything on Facebook, including lies that the Muslims have raped a Buddhist girl in Rohingya province. Let's kill those bastards. Ah! That's going on again and again and again in Ethiopia, in India, in Myanmar, because anybody can post anything on Facebook. It's the biggest news agency in the world. So if we look at these other countries in the world, we can see consistently, including right now at this very moment when it comes to Tigray people of Ethiopia, how hateful content is being prioritized because people want to be enraged. They want their stereotypes and biases confirmed. And how do you get them confirmed? By finding other people that share your bias, thanks to Facebook. By Facebook encouraging you, oh, you like this anti-Tigray statement? Well, then maybe you like this additional anti-Tigray statement, because that's what the algorithm says. It keeps suggesting to you new things to look at based upon what you looked at previously, without anybody involved directly. It's all computer algorithm, AI. Facebook's algorithms. Well, now, having said that, let's defend social media. You remember, like a couple weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, Facebook went down around the whole planet for like 5 hours, and it was a major shock to the global economy. In Africa, in Asia, businesses market on Facebook. That's the only way they market their products. They take orders on Facebook. So it's really important for the world economy, particularly in these poor countries like Philippines, where people trying to make a living, they can advertise and communicate with their customers on Facebook. Because as I said, in the Philippines, Facebook is the internet. It is the internet. That country of 100 million people. Facebook algorithms tend to work very well with the demagogue leaders who spew hateful content, and they tend to rebut, and they tend to rebut the voices, as has always been the case over the last several years, of minorities, people that have belonged to more or less despised minority groups, Jews, Muslims, right, of indigenous peoples, of Muslims, and so on. So this has real life effects in terms of fomenting actual violence against people who are the most vulnerable in our world. And so this represents a profound, not negligence by Facebook, but they recognize they can get away with it. Simply hire a few exploited content moderators in places like the Philippines who are encountering post-traumatic stress syndrome because they see so much horrible stuff on Facebook with violence, people taking pictures with their smartphones, killing somebody, and then, taking the picture. Click, see what we did? Yeah. And then basically, let the game play out in these countries in the world, which represent the vast majority, again, of Facebook's users. So it goes on here. This is the world we confront in terms of foreign policy and international relations. What do I want to highlight here? I mean, that is absolutely what's occurring, because all of us, imagine if billions of us, and we're talking about approximately 3.5 billion or so people around the world with some access and engagement with Facebook technologies, recognizing that in many parts of the world, Facebook is actually the internet and WhatsApp is actually the cell phone network. So what this means is actually we are turning to Facebook to be our media company, our gateway to the world, and to be our space of democratic communication, when it is anything but that. Because imagine 3.5 billion people, all with their own screens, that are actually unlocking them into a world that is not the public sphere in any sense at all, but is actually based upon polarization, amplification of hate, and more than anything, the sweet spot, the oil of the new economy, which is people's addiction and their attention. And there's nothing that gets our attention more than being put into fight or flight, getting outraged, getting angry, getting just that sort of agonized. And that is exactly what Facebook is doing, because we're all being presented with completely different realities, algorithmically on our screen. And those realities are not based on some open sense of dialogue or compassion or tolerance, which, is a foundation of democracy, right? But based on algorithmic extremism, based on all of this data that's being gathered about us, none of which we have any clue about. So are you empowered? Am I empowered? I use Facebook all the time. I mean, I'm using it, you're using it. I use it for my work, not just for my friends and family. I use it with my family. When I get something published, I post it on Facebook. So participation. So let me go give you some participation credit here. And so have you vote. Make sure. So please vote. Let me make sure you can see that. So please respond to the following statements. Social media enables and empowers citizens to play a more active role in foreign and public, or that is domestic, policymaking. So please vote. He said, there's no right or wrong answer. But, you know, I mean, this is important for current context, right? If you're a Chinese Communist Party leader, you're going to say, yeah, I agree with you, Professor Ben. That's why we have to have the vanguard of the proletariat, the Communist Party, to provide appropriate guidance for you, the workers and peasants of China. Because, you know, there's these conspiratorial forces that want to weaken and polarize our country so that we're weak and divide and destroy us, because they did in the past 100 years ago. So we don't need your American freedom of expression and freedom of the media. No, thank you. You elected Donald Trump. Remember the Americans? Are you really going to be able to deal with climate change, Joe Biden? You can't get your civilization-saving legislation to the US Congress, in part thanks to opposition motivated and mobilized around social media. Even though you, Joe Biden, say we have to face and fight climate change and radically change our economy. Who's going to do it? Americans or the Chinese? And I'm not just making this up. This is what Joe Biden says, US President Joe Biden. We're trying to show the world that democracy can solve these problems. After 4 years of Donald Trump. Okay. So let me go back to the, let's open the notes just to look at the notes so we can say that we looked at the notes. And so let me go to screen share. Okay, yeah, so well, that's last week's notes, sorry. Chapter 8, the impact of mass communication. So make sure that I'm showing that here. Oh, no, I don't want to do that. No, cancel that. Share screen. And I think that's it. Yeah. Okay, so as noted, the American public generally has comparatively low levels of information about the outside world because they are generally uninterested in it, except during times of military crisis. At the same time, they like to be entertained, right? So entertainment involves stereotypes. One of the reasons to study stereotypes is because that's the foundation of popular media. You know, all films have a good guy and a bad guy. And so even though Americans don't really pay much close attention, generally speaking, to international affairs, they know what a terrorist is. So bad guys would be terrorists, maybe Islamic jihadists, even though they don't know really anything about the Middle East. So many US citizens are satisfied with the most cursory press media reports. Not everybody, but generally speaking, Americans compared to Belgians or Swiss or Koreans are also relatively more lacking international exposure through travel and personal contacts with internationals. I think some of you made that point one of you made that point in your midterm, right? About how American leadership, global hegemonic claims to leadership was kind of forced on America. An America that really wasn't prepared for this. Whereas, of course, if you're in Europe, in Switzerland or Belgium, you have all sorts of experience with globalization. For hundreds of years, you've had to interact with people that are not like you. But America, it's separated by two oceans. On the north, it's got a weak neighbor, and the south, it's got a weak neighbor. Very weak. So this notion that Americans have to be cosmopolitan to be successful, it's not something in American identity the way it is in Belgium or Switzerland and now in Korea. So Americans tend to rely more on social media for their news, their ideas, because it's entertaining. It's entertaining. Major news networks have reduced their international news coverage, and news channels tend to be more towards political polemics. Remember, advertising, money, 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 money. now that you have an infinite number of sources of information, thanks to digital media, your product that you produce, your news reports, have to be targeted towards specific groups of people, because the market has been divided and divided and divided into smaller and smaller groups, because you have an infinite number of competitors competing to sell products, gain attention of viewers, to sell advertising time. So that means that people are, the fundamental point I'm making is that this is driven by money. Intense competition in a for-profit industry where if you are not effective in getting people to click on your link or your news source, you will lose in this competition and you'll go out of business. You lose your job, you lose your investments. So this is intensely competitive field, and they're all trying to get your attention and making judgments about, well, you know, I can't appeal to everybody and do it right in a way to make sure that I get enough customers. So I'm going to target my appeals. And this is what algorithmic Facebook social media is all about. So that's why news is moving towards more to becoming entertainment, theater, entertainment, polemics, to get people to pay attention. They tend not to focus on serious efforts to find common solutions to foreign policy issues. So, and you have these new technological innovations like AI, artificial intelligence, that are causing us to rethink our understanding of political communication regarding media and foreign affairs. But keep in mind, for-profit media. And then, of course, news can become more entertaining because new technology makes it possible that we're all journalists now. We're all journalists, investigative journalists. We can all take pictures anywhere and upload them. You know, I remember when I was in high school, or not before high school, watching the news clips of the Vietnam War. You know, when and seeing those terrible battles on television, on the news at night, on those 3 channels I was telling you about. I mean, to get that film footage, somebody had to have this big camera with a tape in it, and he had to tape the battle, and then the film had to be shipped to the United States, and it had to be processed. It took a week. Now, click, I can go to my office, see that horrible murder that just happened in Ethiopia. It just happened this afternoon. So foreign affairs and the media intertwine at various points. So this, I guess this is a good summary of basic information. Like this is the basics about the role of mass communications in politics. Emotions also have a function regarding how people interpret international events and news. And okay, so let's do another exercise. What about this? This is leading up to Trump's election. So my question to you is, please respond to the following statement. The Chinese model for social media regulation is better than the American model for social media regulation. Do you think the Chinese authoritarian censorship model is better than the American model, given the dire picture that I've portrayed so far? And so let me again divide you into groups and breakout rooms, recreate, assign automatically, recreate. All right, so there we go. So Do-hee, Timen, and Chon Hyun Kyung are in room 1. Nick, Sally, and Kim Jae-won are in room 2. And Lisa, Anis, and Kim Eugene in room 3. So let me open up the rooms and flip a coin to see who's going to speak. So heads, the top person in each group will speak. And it's tails. Heads, the middle person. It's heads again. So that will be Timen, Sally, and Anis will speak. So room 1, or whatever, room 1, 2, or 3. Can you get into your groups? Room 1, 2, and 3. And let me remind you what the question is. The Chinese model is better than the American model. And so 1, 2, and 3, okay. And so the person that was in the middle of that list of 3 will speak for the group. And is the Chinese model better than the American model for social media regulation? Not in general. Is it better for social media regulation? Basically, the Chinese model of regulating. You're all by yourself? Who's worst group? Your group 2? Okay. Oh, okay, okay. And if it's not better, what model is better? And okay, so you know where I'm going, you Belgians and Swiss. Is the European model really the best? How many of you pay attention? When I see those websites, do you agree to accept cookies? Do you ever say no? No, I'm not going to. I mean, you always, who cares, right? I mean, so is there really an alternative European model for this? I mean, or do people really want to be manipulated? I want to be controlled. I want somebody to make me feel like somehow, make me feel like I belong in this world. Make me feel like I have a role or a place, even if it's a lie. Please. Don't worry, Ben. We, the powerful marketing companies, will make you feel good. Just use our product. So I will flip a coin. Heads, I'm 1, 2, or 3. And it's heads. Heads, I'm a 1. And it's a tail. Heads, I'm a 2. And it's 2. So I agree that the Chinese model is better than the American model. So I was assigned agree. So I have to come up with an agree statement.
Yes, it's not. I'm too sure. It's not like it's actually this, but everybody like certain websites that see I don't know what your so you think that right model is better? Because I think are we just dealing for social media, or is it just for advice better, or actually no, I think you're right. American is more just more free. So people can this business in China are aware of what's happening outside. So everything is controlled. Lawsuits, websites, and I think that in itself is bad because
are humans, but we should have our own choice of whatever we need. That essence is bad. So I think overall, yeah, the American social heritage. So I think
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Chinese will also use like their like paper breads and I don't because there might be issues that are so but they have
Okay, so let me close the rooms. So we have 60 seconds to finalize your statements. Since we're not virtual, we don't need to wait the whole 60 seconds because, okay, well then let's just go ahead and start then. So who's going to speak first? Heads, it's room 1. And it's heads, so room 1. So that is T-Man.
Yeah, I think it's a very difficult one because I believe that the US population is still controlled to a certain extent. We're still speaking of the Patriot Act that is still there. So they are allowed to, well, the agencies from the US are allowed to spy on you and have access to the things you get, such as happened in crashes they don't need any excuse actually.
Well, I mean, if I were to get on the internet and say, I support Osama bin Laden, I support Islamic jihadism against America, I could get in trouble. So I'm already self-censored. I know there's certain things I can't say. And I think that point is well taken, right? That you see now that as part of the Patriot Act, the effort to prosecute people for leaking information, like Julian Assange leaking information from publishing information that was given to him by Chelsea Manning regarding US crimes in Iraq during the war on terror. He's now being prosecuted. The Americans want to bring him to the United States and prosecute him under the 1917 Espionage Act. During a time of war, the Americans passed the 1917 Espionage Act. So there is already some kind of limits on what you're allowed to say and state in the United States on certain topics like terrorism, whatever that is. And just maybe I'll read my statement. I agree that the Chinese, I was told to agree that the Chinese model is better. I agree, the world is facing a climate global catastrophe, far worse than the threat from terrorism, right? A climate global catastrophe, and we are now in a global state of emergency, or we should be. You know, with the Conference of Parties 26 is meeting in Glasgow, Scotland right now for the next week and a half on this topic. And some people are calling for the United States president to declare a national climate emergency, whatever that means. But it sounds like a state of war, like a war, right? We in effect are in a state of war and the world must undertake emergency action as if in a state of war, in a war against climate change. We must therefore implement national security censorship against climate change denialists who post crap on Facebook claiming that climate change is fraud, is a hoax, like Donald Trump claimed it was. Remember, he got elected president. Against climate change denialists, just as we must against the purveyors of anti-vaccine disinformation and people denying that COVID-19 is real. We must do this. So we must implement national security emergency restrictions in order to organize society to meet this challenge that requires that we revolutionize our economies undergo revolutionary technological and infrastructure change to move away from oil and gas and coal. And do it, what they want to reduce carbon dioxide emissions by 30% in 9 years. I mean, it's something we've never done before, except in wartime, when mobilizing to fight World War II in the United States case. And during World War II, we had censorship against people that undermining the war effort. So we need censorship. We need to move on this. And well, remember, I don't necessarily believe that. I was told to by George Washington here in this American quarter. So let's hear now what group 2 is heads, and it is tails. So Anais, group 3.
Yes, just to read what because we think freedom of speech is more important than misinformation.
Freedom of speech is more important than accurate information.
And then misinformation. Yeah. Because like people feel like they have some change to actually change politics or change the world. Versus the Chinese model, they don't have any, they can share what they think.
You know, I really like these exercises because I get inspired. You guys are really provoking stuff. I can imagine a scenario whereby the US government seizes control over Facebook because they have to control the lies that are on Facebook in the name of national security in the midst of global climate emergency. Just like, for example, Harry S. Truman during the Korean War seized control of the US steel mills because the workers in US steel mills in 1950 were going on strike. While Harry S. Truman, president, thought we have to mobilize to prepare to fight World War III against the communists because they're starting their world conquest in Korea, and now they're going, who knows where they're going to attack next? It's in Germany. So, and these steel workers in these steel factories in America are going on strike. And they seize control. And then the Supreme Court says, Harry, you can't really do that. But I can imagine that the US government would take control over Facebook in the name of national security to stop, and they would say to prevent the lies from our enemies and others that, of course, with Russia in 2016, supposedly under Vladimir Putin, spreading lies to help Donald Trump get elected by spreading disinformation, that we now have to seize control over these social media companies to provide editorial oversight. Because they won't do it on their own. They can't do it. They're unable to do it. They can barely do it now. Most of the money Facebook, they're trying to hire human beings to be moderators over Facebook content, right? But you know, they catch some of that garbage, these human beings, but they're not spending enough money on moderating content posted in Philippines or Ethiopia or India or Myanmar. You know, is Facebook going to find Myanmar Burmese moderators to regulate Facebook in Myanmar? or Amharic or Tigrayan or Ethiopian moderators who are going to moderate Facebook in Ethiopia that posting language that are in languages that are not English? I can imagine that kind of scenario in this wartime emergency. That'll be, and they'll label it something like infrastructure. That, you know, just like the global radio and other forms of communication are regulated by the federal government. Facebook has to be regulated by the federal government. But it has to change. Okay, so, and then
You think that's why they just announced the rebrand last week?
the what?
Yeah, last week or this week they announced that they're going to rebrand. they're gonna change the name Facebook Corporation.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, that Facebook, yeah, he's claiming he wants to move into new technology with metaverse and artificial reality and virtual reality, you know, where you put on the goggles and you see a world and you act like, he claimed that they're basically just moving into a new type, a new technological field. Google did something like that when they set up Alphabet, but it's still basically Google. But yeah, is he afraid? I guess, not to mention that you could imagine that might be something that's a motivation. That basically he's concerned that they're going to step in. The US government's going to step in, the European government's going to step in, and they're going to do something about Facebook, and Facebook's going to change. And so he wants to get, but you know, but Google doesn't get as much focus of attention. Google set up Alphabet. I don't know enough about it, just all I know is from the media news reports about why they did that. I got a sense it's because these people were tired of running. Good questions, good questions. And so that leaves Sally. Okay, Sally, where does your group fit on the scale?
Disagree.
You disagree, and why do you disagree?
Over control the media. Also, they tend to show people good positive side of China. Also, prohibit specific application. Chinese actors post political comment. They cannot appear the video. It's an evidence of However, they recognize that there are side effects of fake news. So the end are based on
Yeah, I mean, the Chinese model is really kind of extreme. Like, they're now censoring people for posting too much about their favorite boy bands in China. Because these boy band men, they look too much like girls. That they're, I mean, what kind of model is that for regulating Facebook and social media? So, but some kind of national, in the American case, and it will have to be some kind of national security argument that we need to do this for threats to, yeah, but they might, I mean, they do it with political Islam already, but how would they do that for people that deny climate change? Why would you say, how could you convince me and you that those people who deny climate change are threatening my well-being? You know, COVID-19, that's one thing. Like they argue, you know, if you don't get vaccinated, it's hurting me. We all have to get vaccinated so that we can live a better life. And if you don't get vaccinated, the virus will still circulate, I can still get infected, and deviants will emerge. That's the argument they make, that you can force people to get the vaccine. And it's legitimately accepted, but how are you going to force people not to be able to access climate lies? And I don't have an answer. Right now, anyway. Okay, so let me go back to give you some participation credit here, back to vote. And those clocks are a little slow, I think, in the background. So vote, and let's see, go back to, I think this thing, what happened to it? Okay, so please vote as to whether or not you think, it says my internet connection is unstable. That's interesting. So please vote as to your views on this. And I think you already all voted, okay. Disagree, neutral, cannot decide. But as we go into national emergency, I'm really fascinated to think through this. Yeah.
The end, you also have like right, who also has some news companies, news outlets, media companies, and I also see China taking over
Yeah, they're cracking down on these computer apps that gather data. But again, we don't really know what the motivation is. Somehow are they concerned? The argument often is in the Western media reporting in the New York Times, that the fundamental assumption is that the Communist Party is concerned primarily about staying in power, which means they coerce people, but in turn for accepting the coercion and the control, you live a safe, secure life, relatively speaking. So, and so you're not going to be manipulated into doing bad things by social media who are trying to sell you things that they shouldn't try to sell you. But what is the real motivation of the Communist Party in China? It's to prevent threats to their rule, which they of course self-justify as being absolutely necessary for the well-being of the people of China, because people always want to argue how what they want is good for not just for you, it's good for you too. So of course the Communist Party has to stay in power and censor because we're concerned about the well-being of the people. So we're in a fascinating time in international relations and world history, and you're in U.S. foreign policy, studying the foreign policy of what has been the most powerful country in the world, not as powerful as it likes to believe it is, and at a critical time in the development of our civilization. So I think at that time we can quit, we can stop, and